As we always start, let's give a round of applause to everyone that comes because it takes great people to help and support amazing people. So a round of applause for you all. My name is Michelle Howell. For anyone who doesn't know me, I realize that I haven't introduced myself to any of these. But like I've said before, if you want to nominate anyone for any of this, if you think someone's doing something awesome, if you're doing something awesome, please tell me so I can have a knowledge of all this and let me know. And that's kind of it for me. So without further ado, here's Excy. Excy is from we went over this and I'm gonna mess it up. Antelitinda? Atlanta, okay. Honduras, but she now lives in Falls Church, Virginia. She's the vice president of the Sewanee Praise Gospel Choir in HOLA. She's a member of the National Society of Leadership and Success. She's a posse scholar and a dreamer. She loves to dance to bachata.
Bachata.
Oh, gosh. And her motto is good things come in small packages. So let's give a round of applause to Excy.
Hello everybody, thank you for coming. And I just wanted to thank the Women's Center for this event because I feel like it really gives us a chance to share with the campus and everyone else watching the video later on what we're doing. And the group that I work with, we're very thankful for this opportunity because we've been working really hard and we love to talk about what we're doing. We just don't get enough, I guess, chances to do that just because we're so busy and always, I mean, what we do is like a 24/7 kind of thing. And I'll talk about that a little later. So I'll say a lot, so just like give me a signal if I'm doing that a lot. I do it when I'm nervous. But about me, just really quickly, I'm 5 feet even, and I a lot of people argue with me over that, so I probably would state that. I immigrated to the U.S. at age 4 or 5, and my family and I, we lived in Honduras in this little tiny, like isolated neighborhood, kind of like Sewanee, but less pretty and less, you know, with buildings and all that kind of stuff. More mud, more like, you know, muddy streets and that kind of thing. And a lot of, you know, kids in the street, kids just picking up snakes just out on the road like nothing, that kind of thing. So that was my life, a little bit of what it was like there. We lived in something called a champa. It's like kind of like an adobe kind of house with like straw ceiling kind of thing. And we slept in hammocks. And my mom has this really funny story that she always tells us to like portray how bad the situation was. She says that between me, my brother, my dad, and her, we would share one egg, like half hard-boiled egg, and split it 4 ways, and that was like our lunch for the day. And so we laugh at that. We're like, man, that's exaggerated. Like it's how can you split one egg 4 ways? But it is possible. And so I don't know to this day like whether to believe her or just like, you know, she's just exaggerating. You know, that's how bad it was. And so my dad, he immigrated first to the United States, and he left like every other immigrant that's came here that tells their story. You know, I immigrated to the U.S. with nothing in my pockets, with, you know, just the clothes on my back. That's literally how my dad came, with a few savings that he had in a backpack for you know, change of clothes. So he, since he didn't have a lot, you know, he worked here and there at the houses that would let him stay for a while. He would do the laundry, just clean around the house for a few pennies, and then pay the next person to, you know, take him further up north. So he hitchhiked his way up north, and he a lot of times when you'll hear, well, I don't know if you guys really follow this kind of stuff. I guess I follow it because it's so like directly connected to my life. But a lot of times when people immigrate, there's so many different ways for them to fall into just negative things. They could either, there's coyotes, right? These are people that bring you over, and you pay them a certain fee to bring you over, and they're supposed to make sure that you get here safe, and that they bring you through the right route, right? So the coyotes, you don't know who they are. They could be involved with, a drug trafficking or human trafficking. You could end up in prostitution. You could die in the desert. You could die anywhere. My dad almost died of sickness just because he didn't have enough for medicines, and he was traveling, not feeding himself enough, that kind of thing. So many things can go wrong, but thankfully he made it, and he's here. And then he brought my mom over, and then he brought my brother, and we were about the same age, me and my brother. And so then once my parents got here, they didn't go to school. They didn't have the chance to go to school. The education system in Honduras is not the best, just like many other Latin American countries. And so they were really poor as well, and they lived kind of like in the mountains. It was, going to school was like a big journey, a huge sacrifice. And so instead they worked at home, and they helped provide for the rest of the family by working, in the farms or trying to work locally for the family. And so they, when they got here, the only thing they could do with documents and with barely any education, barely knowing how to read or write, they became janitors. And so they had to have multiple jobs, because that kind of job doesn't really pay much. So they had like 3 to 4, maybe more, depending on how long the jobs were. They were part-times. So we never saw them when we started school. When we'd be in school, they were home. When we'd be home, they were at work. So me and my brother always came home to an empty house. So that affected us a lot. And this is a lot of my story. The reason why I'm telling you guys is because this is everybody's story is different. Every immigrant story is different, but there are always similarities. And one of these similarities is the fact that the parents can't be at home always, doing family things, having dinner, things that are considered normal, right, in the American lifestyle. So this opens up a possibility for the kids to, if they live in the wrong type of neighborhood, this makes it a possibility for them to get involved in gangs, to be influenced by gangs, to be a victim of abuse, to get into bad habits. And me and my brother weren't any different from that. Like we lived in a neighborhood where there were a lot of gangs and a lot of drugs and that kind of thing. So we were around that all the time. So it was kind of hard to stay away from that unless we were locked inside. After school, just being locked inside. So then, where was I going with that? Okay, so that allows for that kind of thing. And so that made I had a resentment. I had a lot of resentment towards my parents because they were never there, and I wasn't really understanding why they weren't ever there. I mean, I knew they had to work, but so what? I wanted them to be there. So with that resentment, I wasn't doing good in school. I mean, I bragged about how many Fs I had in my class, and between me and my friends, it was like, well, I have more Fs. Well, I said this to this teacher, and I'm the baddest one out of this group. So it was like a competition, like who cares? Nobody cares about me, so I'm not gonna care about anything else. So that was bad. And my brother, being a boy, you feel the pressure to be a real man, to be a macho, to be respected in a place where you don't get a lot of respect because immigrants aren't respected. Most of the time, they aren't respected in the areas that they're in, the workplace or at school, where a lot of kids that immigrate, they're put in ESL classes or remedial classes or lower classes, than they should actually be in, simply because they don't know the language or because they're considered to not be at that level. And so they feel like nobody really has high expectations of them, so they lower their expectations as well. And so that was my case, and so I didn't care. I was like, whatever. So then okay, give me 1 second. Okay, so all these things relate to other people's stories, like I told you guys, and that's one reason why I was involved in why I am involved in the DREAM Act movement and the immigrant rights movement, because so many people's rights are being violated every day, and my parents, I mean, they're not indifferent, like they've been in that situation too. At the race panel, if you were there, I told a story. I got pretty heated when I told it, but it was like Christmas or New Year's Eve, and we were helping them out so we could get out of there quick. They were cleaning dealership, and so we finished early, but the boss and the workers were still there, and so and they're usually never there, but they had like a sale thing going on, and so we wanted to leave early to be with our family, and it was like 11:30, 12 a.m. and around there, and so I asked her nicely, if it was all right for us to leave, because we had finished early, and so my mom doesn't know any English. They can understand, but they don't know any English, and that's why I was the one to approach her boss. And so I went up to her, and instead what I got was, this lady, this white American lady, the boss, she yelled at me, and she was like, "You expect me to think that, these rooms are clean, they're dirty, they're filthy, all these things." And we had worked really hard to make sure that everything was in place, and she hadn't really been looking at what we were doing, but she, I don't know, maybe she had a bad day, but she took it out on me, and so she was talking, bad about my mom, like, oh, she doesn't clean well, or she does this, she doesn't do this, and I know my mom, and I go to work with her a lot to help her out, so I know she does a good job. Like, she really cares about her job, and she really needs this job, even though it's a low-paying job, and there are no benefits, there are no vacations, and so I got immediately offended, and and then she asked to talk to my mom, and I said, my mom doesn't speak any English, but I could get her, and I could translate for you, and the boss was, she started laughing. She was like, wow, they're not good at anything. They don't know how to speak English. They don't know how to clean, and so I got really offended at that point. It was too much. So I decided, this was my freshman year of college. So I was like, okay, well, I'm in college. I have rights. I know English. I'm educated. So I'm gonna say something to her, because this is not okay. So I told her, I don't appreciate you saying those things about my mom. I don't think it's right for you to talk about her that way. Like, we've worked hard, and so I shouldn't have done that. But I was really angry, and I wanted to stand up for my mom. But I wasn't thinking of the consequences. So I did this, and there were a lot of customers and employees around. So that moment, her boss, she told me that, she was like, okay, fine, well, you shouldn't have done that, you shouldn't have said that to me, she's fired. And so I was like, oh my goodness, what have I done? And I was like, well, can I please talk to you? I'm sorry, I said that, I was really offended by what you said about my mom. And, what do you mean by they? Who's they? And so, she's like, well, you should have thought of that sooner. And I was like, well, this is the job, the one that pays the most, and this is what pays for our rent. She's like, well, I don't care. You could go about find another job. And it's that easy for people to do that sometimes, especially because you can easily find somebody at the corner where I live that's willing to work for a very low wage, that's willing to work for no benefits, for no vacations, because they need the money so bad. And so it's easy for them to just dismiss it like that. And definitely, I know I had fall in that, but at the same time, like, I do think it was unfair, and that's something that, I mean, there's other people whose rights are violated way worse, like Joanna and I and a few other HOLA members. We helped a group of undocumented workers who had been working in Manchester at a factory, just, you know, putting boxes together, and their boss just decided, you know, he didn't have enough month after month after month, and then it became 6 months, and so these families didn't have enough to even get to work to feed their families. You know, they needed the money, so they decided to stop working one day. They went to work, but they didn't work, and they sat in the lunchroom and they protested. And so what the boss did was he called the police, and he told the police to turn the workers into immigration. And when you turn the workers to immigration and they don't have documents, what happens is, you know, the immigration will most probably put them in deportation proceedings, and that means that they will be sent back to their country that they came from. They, you know, they can't tell their families what's happening. You know, if they have kids or if they have somebody that's got to be picked up after work, you know, so what? They don't care. That doesn't matter. And they can easily do that. The employer can easily do that, and then just go somewhere and find some other, you know, people who are willing to work in those conditions, and maybe not get paid a month or 6 months, but still say they have a job. So that happens a lot. So we help them with their U visa and residency applications, because when you're a victim of some kind of abuse and you're undocumented, you actually qualify for a visa, and then later on you could do paperwork. You can put in paperwork for residency and then citizenship. So in the end, it actually helped them that they were abused. It really sucked that they had to go through that in order to actually have some type of documentation and have a voice. But it worked out, and so that's a nice story. Not a nice story, but it has a good ending. So then, other than that, the DREAM Act and the immigration movement, the reason why I'm involved with that is because undocumented students aren't allowed aid from the government, financial aid. So a lot of students, a lot of undocumented students are brought over here really young, like myself, and they go through the education system, sometimes, you know, from kindergarten, like myself, kindergarten to high school, you know, and constantly being, you know, ideas being put in their head. You can do it, you can be whatever you want, you can do this, you can do that, you can be a doctor, you know, and so they grow up with these expectations like, oh, okay, well, I can do whatever I want, I can be whoever I want, and then the college application comes, and then they are not able to attend universities or get financial aid, and they're charged international, they're looked at as international students, so the fees are like, you know, even higher than just being somebody like a resident of another state or of the state. So, so that's something that's really unfair, because if they've been here all their life and they're trying to go to school to then become productive citizens, and then give back to their communities and create jobs and that kind of thing, why are you denying these people, you know, the chance to pursue their dreams and to help, you know, to be a part of the community? They're already a part of the community. Maybe a document or a piece of paper says that they're not, but that doesn't mean that they're, you know, in their heart and, you know, in their personality, they're American. I consider myself an American. This is my home. I'm from Honduras. I was born there. I love my country, but this is what I know. And they're right before deferred action for childhood arrivals passed. I think it's been almost 2 years now. since Obama passed that policy. Before that, they were deporting these students. You know, if you're found on the street and you look undocumented and you look like an immigrant, they might just ask you, and if you don't know your rights and you say, yes, I'm undocumented, or yes, I'm here illegally, then they'll take you and put you in deportation proceedings and send you back, and then you can't come back in. And if you come back in, then there's a higher penalty. So, you know, people were being sent back into places that they didn't know, into an environment that they were unfamiliar with, and that happened to my brother. So my family is one of those that, I mean, there's millions of families right now that are getting separated. Every day there's at least 1,000 families or 1,000 people being separated through deportation proceedings. So this is going on, and it's not in the media. In the media, what you see is, you know, oh, immigrants are sucking everything out of the system, or oh, they're living off of the system, they're living off of the welfare system. The reality is we don't qualify for any type of benefit unless it's like you know, if you go like a public clinic or something like that, or that kind of thing. But, you know, we're seen as like people who suck everything from the government and or from the country, and we're living off of everyone's tax dollars, but we don't qualify for a lot of the services like healthcare. I mean, I could just go on forever. And so a lot of times, if you get sick and you're undocumented, and you gotta pray that those medicines at CVS or the ones that they give you at the free clinic will work, because you most likely won't be able to pay. I mean, you won't be able to pay the bills that, you know, that will be charged for like going to the hospital. So one of the ways, I know I'm going all over the place, there's just so much to talk about, but a few of the things that we do, you know, we protest, we do petitions, we do sit-ins in representatives' offices. We, well, I don't, but there's people who you know, do the whole bus thing. You know, where they drive around the country, going to states or places that are like against immigration reform, against the DREAM Act, against immigrants being a part of the country, even though they already are, since we're here. So the DREAM Act, it didn't pass in 2011. It was dropped, and then after that, we were able to win. We didn't like. I mean, we earned the deferred action for childhood arrivals, and that's a win for us. If you don't know what that is, it's like temporary status for undocumented students only, and there are certain requirements. It doesn't apply just to anybody. It's a status that would allow for students to have a license, for students to have a social security number, and a work permit. But this work permit isn't allowed just anywhere. Some professional jobs or government jobs won't allow it as an actual documentation, but it's something. And something is better than nothing, you know. For people who don't have deferred action, they walk around with literally no ID. So if anything happens to them, I mean, there's no ID on them. You can't get an ID if you don't have certain documents. So when you have no documents, then, you know, a lot of things can go wrong. You can't go to the club. You can't, you know, you can't do a lot of things. You can't drive. You gotta depend. You're pretty much like a child all your life, because you can't prove, this is my age, this is my name, this is where I live. So you can't prove your identity, you know. So this is a huge step, but at the same time, deferred action for childhood arrivals, it doesn't cover our families. It doesn't cover our moms and our dads and our uncles and, you know, the rest of our family. It only covers, you know, it only covers me, for example. It doesn't cover the rest of my family. So that's why we're fighting for comprehensive immigration reform, so that we can find a solution so that everyone has something and not nothing. because with this policy, I mean, my parents or somebody in my family could still be deported. They're not safe from being deported. They could just, be stopped somewhere. There's a lot of racial profiling going on. They could just be stopped somewhere for looking undocumented, for looking like an immigrant or an outsider. And a lot of times when they do that, when the police does that, they will ask for your documents, even though that's not their job. Their job is to keep the community safe, to keep the community, in check, make sure there's no crime going on. But if somebody's just driving and they're not, committing any violation, then why are you stopping them and asking them if they're undocumented, if they're illegal, if they're an immigrant? That happens a lot. I know from personal experience, from my family's experience, from our students in ESL, that happens to them. So there's a lot going on, and unless you're like directly around it or know somebody, then you don't know that that's happening. So it's good to be aware and to know what's going on, because that way, you can do something about it. And that's why I've gotten involved with that. I guess I'll turn over to what we do in HOLA and ESL in our workshops now. So HOLA, the Hispanic Organization for Latino Awareness, we try to have panels, speakers, cultural events, all kinds of things, so we can bring awareness to the campus of these kinds of issues, of our culture, of who we are, and also incorporate the campus in what we do. We have a hard time sometimes, getting people to our events. I don't know if it's because we're scary, I don't know. It's hard, but I invite everyone to come to our events. We have a lot of fun, and if you could see my pictures, you would see that it is fun. But some of the things we do, we have a ESL program that we started last year. This is our second year doing it. We do the ESL program in Manchester. Me and Joanna are leading it. Joanna is the Canale intern, and she's the president of the program right now. And what we do is, let me just tell you a little bit of how it started. A student from SAS, Will, I don't know his last name, but he lives in Manchester, in Coffee County, and he decided, he saw a lot of people who could, probably use some English and learn some English. So he had just learned Spanish, and he had a Spanish notebook. So he walked around to Mexican restaurants and stores and just started talking to people hey, would you be interested in coming to English classes? What day and what time? So he started just gathering people just randomly to do in ESL classes, but it wasn't really structured. It wasn't an actual class. It was just literally out of his Spanish notebook, which is so cool that he did that. And then after a year, I believe, he was graduating and he was leaving for college. So then he was trying to look for someone to continue what he started, and that's where we came into play. So I got an email, I forget from who, asking me if HOLA would be interested in this, since we probably have Spanish speakers, and we probably know people who speak other languages. And I was like, yes, definitely, let's do it. It sounds exciting. But I didn't know what we were getting into. But it turned out great. Right now, it's the best it could ever be. We started interviewing for tutors, and the reason why we interviewed is because we want people who are committed, people who can come every Saturday. Because what we discovered through trial and error is that the best way to have a class that's committed of students, of ESL students, is to have committed tutors and committed teachers who are always there and creating relationships with the community, creating relationships with the students, and getting them excited about it. And if we change volunteers each week, then you put a different student, a different Sewanee student with an ESL student each time, and they'll go through the same phases of being shy, being embarrassed that they don't know Spanish. The Sewanee student might not know what level they're at of ESL, so then you gotta start from scratch. So it's just too much. That's why we do interviews. So So after the interviews, we've been able to really create a community. There's been students who tell us like they feel like they finally belong to something. They finally feel like they belong here, like they have a community, like they have a support group. And a lot of our students are immigrants. They are adults. They are maybe in their 30s, 40s. And we try to make it as accessible as we can to them by having somebody who's going to babysit their children, because a lot of times they have families, they have more than one child, so we tell them, it doesn't matter if you have kids, bring them, we'll take care of them while you're in class, so they're like, oh man, you'll do that for me? It's great. I can't afford a babysitter, but if you do for free, that's great. So we do activities with the kids while other people are tutoring and teaching the actual class. We've divided our classes into advanced and not advanced, level 1 and level 2. And Joanna teaches the advanced class, and I teach the other class. And we have tutors, one tutor working with each ESL student, sitting at the table, and just guiding them through the lesson for the day. Oh my gosh, it worked. Okay. Yay. Alright. So, let me just show you. Oh, you keep talking. Okay. Sorry. Okay. So that's what we do with the ESL program, and we always, at the end of class, I always ask them, what do you do if the police stops you? And they respond right back, don't answer any questions. What do you do if they ask you if you're illegal, if you're undocumented or whatever? Don't say nothing. And I've given them like these little cards. They're like Know Your Rights cards. It's in English and in Spanish, and so if they can't tell them, I would wish to remain silent, then they could just, whip out the card and hand it to them. And their the number of their lawyer, their immigration lawyer, is on the bottom. So that like does it all for them if they're too nervous and just can't communicate to the officer. That they can't say that. So, and then I'm like, what do you do if immigration comes to your door and wants to just barge in? Don't open the door, right? They scream it back and they say, I'm like, well, what if they want to come in and they say they're looking for so-and-so? They're like, oh, well, you asking for a warrant. And I'm like, what does the warrant have to say? They're like, your address, the name of the person, So it's like, it's become a routine, and a lot of them didn't know these kind of things. And I guess I was able to know more about, what they should do or shouldn't do through the DREAM Act movement and the immigration movement. You just learn a lot about your rights, just as a human being. You don't have to be a citizen and have a piece of paper to have rights. So during the summer and during this year, the school year, we're gonna continue doing Know Your Rights workshops. We do Know Your Rights workshops in that community since there's a growing immigrant community in Manchester and in the surrounding areas. And what we do is, we bring in a lawyer, volunteer lawyer, who's willing to volunteer, maybe 3 or 4 hours, and we just sit there. We invite the community over. The last one we had was really packed. I have a picture somewhere here. And they really, really appreciated having this workshop because it hasn't been done in their, I can present this. It hasn't been done in their community. So that's me right there, and that's the lawyer that came and volunteered. And pretty much we just went over like a PowerPoint presentation of like what you should do, what are your rights, that kind of thing. And then we did a Q&A afterwards. And I just want to stress with that workshops are so doable. Like we didn't know how doable they were before, but I mean you can do anything, pretty much. Anything that you want to bring awareness to, you just find a venue. I mean you guys know like planning events here is pretty much the same thing outside of Sewanee. And I would encourage everyone to to go out and do something like this, at least one workshop a semester. Like, it will really, you know, we're always talking about, oh, we want to create connections with Sewanee and other communities and surrounding communities. This is a great way to do it because you're literally like face to face with people. You know, and I met a lot of really amazing people just through the one workshop that I did. So that's another thing we do. We do workshops. And then another workshop that we do, that we're planning right now, is a workshop for undocumented students and citizen students who want to go to college, but they don't have the economic resources to do it, or they just don't know the path to go to college, because their parents probably haven't been to college, so they don't know. So we're bringing the information to them. Joanna and I have put like a committee together of professors and students and community members who want to help, and we just finally finalized the schedule and the venue and the food and all that kind of stuff. It's going to be great. So that's just another workshop we're doing. And if you guys want to get involved or know more about it, please feel free to talk to me or Joanna afterwards. So we do a lot of cultural events and you know, parties and a lot of food events, but we also are really involved in the community, directly with the community, to the point where a lot of the people in Manchester think I'm an immigration lawyer. They decided to want to come up to me and like ask me, you know, really personal questions and like tell me their whole story before I can like tell them, I'm sorry, like I'm not a lawyer. I know the answer, but I don't want to give like advice, because I'm gonna like get you deported or something like that. Give the wrong information. So don't do that. Don't give the wrong information. So also we try to go to as many like events out in the community, just so people can like know who we are, know our face. This was at a festival at the Catholic Church in Manchester. We just had a table set up, letting people know who we were. We're from Sewanee. We're doing workshops and you know, taking people's information down. And that's where we got students to sign up for the workshops, for the undocumented student workshops. And that's just us cooking. We cook a lot at HOLA from scratch. So our meetings are great because we always have really good food. That's Culture Fest. That's our meetings. Our meetings are packed and a lot of food. We've also have started a partnership with the School of Theology. We do Spanglish services now and then. So like right now we're planning to do one for the Day of the Dead. And if you guys want to know more about that, please ask me. And this is just an event. We put the kickoff for Hispanic Heritage Month. We had a service, and then we had food, and then the music came on, and so people decided they wanted to dance outside at 2 p.m. So that was fun. That's nice. That's a piñata, yes. That was a lot of fun. And this was this is Dean Bankston's son. This was for the Hispanic Heritage Month as well, just raising awareness about, you know, the month and for who we are and what we do, and it was a really fun event. And that's another picture. Did Auburn for Apples. And we also had a dance off for Hispanic Heritage Month, and then this just back to I'm all over the place. I'm sorry. So yeah, that's a little bit of what we do. We do all kinds of things. We're very involved, and we invite everyone to come to our events, to get involved in our programs. If you guys have ideas for workshops, I mean, hey, let's do it. Let's get it done. They're a lot of fun, and it's, like I told you, like it's a 24/7 kind of thing. I mean, Joanna, like, she just got a call from one of the students who wants to come to the undocumented higher education workshop. So, I mean, on the weekends, like we do the classes on the weekends. We leave at 7:30, come back to like 12 p.m. So it's like an all 24/7 hour thing. Sundays we, have meetings about the ESL program. I mean, just all around. But we love it. We love it because we're doing something. We're making a change it's it's different, and we want it to continue. So if you're a junior or a sophomore, or I mean even if you're a senior and you're just interested in being a part of this, we want it to continue. We want you guys to be a part of this so that it can grow, because it's grown in just 2 years. We went from like 3 students to like 12 students, and they're committed students. They come all the time. And this picture is just a day of class that we didn't have class that Saturday. We did like a debrief kind of thing where we just got feedback from the students, like, what do you think about the classes? What can change? What should stay? And everyone brought something to contribute. Joanna and I made flan. It was really good. And we had Cheetos for breakfast as well. Somebody brought Cheetos. So it's a lot. So I know I overwhelmed you guys, like so much information, but I'm so glad you guys could come, and if you have any questions, please let me or Joanna know.
Questions, ask them away.
Yes.
I have a question. You talked a lot about the DREAM Act and being really interested in it. Do you do any activities with it through HOLA, or is that a separate thing, or is that just an interest you have? Or
In Tennessee, like the organizations that deal with that kind of activism, they're all in Nashville, so it's kind of hard. But when we can, we like reach out to them. They've invited us to events. They've invited us to rallies and protests, and when they're gonna, turn in petitions to representatives to change a policy. But a lot of times we can't because a lot of us don't have cars, and that just comes in the way. But back home in Virginia, I definitely am, just because I'm so close to DC, and that's like where all the action happens. But the DREAM Act is actually not something we are fighting for anymore. It's actually comprehensive immigration reform, just because it wasn't really getting anywhere, and the deportations are like out of control. The family separations are out of control, so that's what our focus is right now. So each time when we've like fought for something, the focus has changed because of what's going on in that moment. So we definitely care a lot about the education factor, but at the same time we care a lot about our families as well. We want to keep our families intact. And one of the ways we can do that is pushing for immigration reform.
Do you find the people that you're working with in the community, is it more of like families that have come, or is it more of like single men or single women, or they have families back home, or is it completely diverse? Or?
It's a lot of them are from Mexico. There are a few from like Central America. Very, very few from like South America, but in the Manchester area, it's mostly Mexican families, and the ESL students, they all have families, and we used to have only women and 1 male, but now we have 2 or 3 males, and a little bit more women, but they all have families, and they bring their kids, and we have couples as well in our classes, so they come together, and they say they enjoy it, and they say they're learning. I don't know if they really are. We probably gotta have a test pretty soon, but they're enjoying it. They say they love it, and they feel like it makes them feel like they belong to something. Yeah.
Can you talk about the DREAM Act, that it wasn't passed, that it was another one, the Deferred Act, it was passed? What are the requirements in order to qualify for the one that passed?
Okay, yeah, the DREAM Act was dropped, and what passed was Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, DACA is what it's called. And the requirements there are a lot of requirements. So for anything any type of status, there are a lot of requirements that you have to meet. You can't just get it. A lot of people think that you can just go and apply for citizenship, but you can't just apply because there isn't a law in place or a policy in place that allows for you to do that. That's why we're stuck. So deferred action, after it was passed, it allowed for people to have certain 3 things, right? The license and the work permit and the social security. But the requirements, among them, you have to have lived here for at least 5 years. You have to be a student, be in high school, and show proof that you are going to a community college or a higher, 4-year college, and you have to have be of a certain age range. There's like a range that you can be. So for people that don't meet that age range or haven't been here for 5 years, maybe they've been here for 4, well, at least 5 years. So people who have been here longer, great. But people who have been here less time, they don't qualify. So, and then there's people who have like been deported and they come back, they risk it again, they come back, and because they came back in, even though they were here for a very long time all their life, and they came just freshly in, there's like a certain date that you're supposed to have been here 4 or 5 years or longer. So if you just got here again, even though this is your home, then you don't qualify. So there are a lot of every story is different, and it just ranges. Yeah.
Any more questions?
Yes.
So, what's it like doing what you're doing at a place like Sewanee, where it's like the majority of students are white, the majority of students are middle, upper class, and do you feel like you get enough support from Sewanee, and what could Sewanee do to support you better?
Okay. It's different because most of us in our group, we are Latino. We do have students that are white. We have Rebecca, we have Pierce, and a few others. I can't remember. It's a big group, but back home, it's like a big Latino community, and this is what everyone does. Everyone's like involved in something similar to this, and because there's just so many needs in the community. So being here, it's like, like everyone says who works off the mountain somewhere, volunteering somewhere out there, you see the big change between Sewanee and the bubble, and then leaving and going out into the community and seeing the big difference of how people live. And when we just have a conversation, for example, with the students, and we're like, how was your weekend? Well, I worked from 4 a.m. in the morning to 8 p.m. in the fields, just picking vegetables. It's not something that you hear from somebody at Sewanee, or a parent or an adult from Sewanee. So it just really puts in perspective the realities of other people, of what their lives are. So, but other than that, Sewanee has given us a lot of support, especially with the Canali. DeAndre, when he was here, he was a part of the group as well, and he was able to get that funding for us. So, so that helps, and it doesn't cover everything. We like to have breakfast because a lot of the people can't afford a 3-day meal, so we want to at least provide breakfast. And we just have sometimes just coffee and bread, that's like sweet bread. So we can't afford to give everyone breakfast. So sometimes we give the first people that come in breakfast, but then the people that come in last or are late, they don't get breakfast, their kids don't get breakfast. So we're trying to just find different ways that we can find more funding. And other than that, when people hear about the program, they're like, yeah, good job, you're doing a great thing, that's awesome, and then that's where it dies. But we need help making the program grow. Whether it's we had started, whether it's them being able to create a website for us, or more ideas on how to expand the program, or finding another free venue or free space